So in this video we're going to talk about one of those most basic of bike related projects, and that is lubing or greasing your chain. This video will apply to any bike with pretty much any metal chain, whether it's a mountain bike or a road bike, even bikes with in-hub gearing. You just ignore the bit about the cassettes and the derailleurs. And I'm also going to cover, firstly, degreasing the old chain, assuming that it's pretty manky and dirty and wants to be cleaned completely before the new stuff is put on. So this definitely needs a good degrease and a good clean down. So to degrease it, I'm going to use some actual degreaser, some spray-on stuff. This is automotive degreaser. You can get it from any car supply store. And I'm going to use some old brush. This is a dishwash brush. You just want something with sort of stiff bristles that you don't mind getting filthy and ruining, basically. And a rag, which we're going to use to protect the rest of the bike from the degreaser. You don't want to get degreaser on paint or rubber. So to do that, I'm just going to feed it through the chain so that the chain's accessible from the one side, but the rest of the bike is suitably covered. So we'll get started. We'll just start by spraying the sections that are accessible and protected by the rag. And you can also spray directly onto the brush just to get some degreaser on there, because the bristles are going to get in places where maybe the degreaser itself doesn't land. Then once you've done that one section, then just turn the chain around so you've got a new section and rinse and repeat. You can see already in these shots that the chain is immediately starting to look more silver, a lot cleaner than it was. You can also just literally hold the brush against the chain and turn it. Be careful you don't derail the chain when you're doing this. But it's a quick way of cleaning the exterior facing parts of the chain. So you can see now the chain links are starting to look sort of half clean. If you look at the background of this shot on the fabric, you can see these silvery metal shards. That's bits of chain and cassette and chainring that have worn over time, and they've been suspended in the oil all this time, and it's only now that the degreaser is washing away the oil that they've basically been freed and we can see them. Now, once you think you've done all you can with the degreaser, you're going to get some soap in a water bottle, and we're going to squirt that on there and basically rinse and clean the chain just with the soapy water until we get rid of all the degreaser. And it's also going to rinse off, the remaining grease that's just there and hasn't actually left the chain yet. And I'm using a softer brush for this because we're not actually trying to scrub the chain at this point. I'm actually using a fairly soft paintbrush to assist in just wiping everything clear. And once you've done with this stage, you should have a fairly clean chain. If you touch it, you won't get too much grease on your fingers. So after that, we need to do the rest of the components of the drivetrain. That is the front, the gear chain rings, and the cassette at the rear, and also the derailleur cogs at some point. So to do the front chain rings, just unhook the chain off the inner chain ring and just rest it on the bottom bracket shell. Relatively clean chain at this point. And then we can just repeat the process that we did with the chain directly with the chain rings. And what I'm doing here is spraying degreaser directly onto a rag and then applying it with the rag rather than spraying it, because I can't be bothered trying to protect what's behind it. Get some degreaser on the chain rings and then use your brush to scrub them. Wipe them down and then rinse them down as you did with the chain. And once you're happy with them, you can hook the chain back on the inner chain ring. And what we're going to do next is clean the rear cassette on the rear wheel. To do that, we're going to remove the rear wheel. First thing you do is put the rear derailleur, shift the gears so that it's in the smallest cog, the one on the outside. And then you either need to have the bike upside down or on a work stand if you have one. And then you release the quick release on the rear wheel, loosen it, and then carefully lift the rear wheel up and then clear the cassette from the chain and then lift it free and clear. Then you want to put the wheel down on some sort of soft surface. Outside's ideal, on grass or something where you can not worry too much about getting degreaser and grease dripping off it. Do not spray this directly with degreaser because you don't want to get degreaser anywhere near the seals on the wheel hub itself or any of the plastics. So what I'm doing here is I've applied degreaser to the rag, and I'm slipping the rag up in between each chainring at a time. And you can use the free hub action in your favor by turning it one way will turn the wheel, and then you can wipe in the opposite direction, turn it back, it'll turn the wheel some more, wipe back, that's a new section, and you just keep repeating that until you've done 360 degrees. Then rinse that one down with soapy water, just as we did with the chain and the chain rings. Then that is done, and just while we've got the rear wheel off, we'll have a look at the derailleur, assuming your bike has one. Look at the two derailleur cogs or wheels which guide the chain, and give them a good clean too. It's more accessible while the rear wheel's off, so do it now. Then you can remount the rear wheel, just a reversal of how you took it off. Be careful. So once everything's back together, we'll just give everything a final rinse off with some water, some soapy water, and then we will leave it to air dry. And then once it is dry, we can finally get on with the very exciting task of adding new lube. Now the stuff I'm using today is this dry setting PDFE or Teflon based lube. You can use whatever oil strikes your fancy, really. Do some research online, make a choice according to whatever you prefer. I like this stuff because it sets dry, it's sort of waxy, and it looks very clean. But there really is no obvious answer that just addresses every possible need. So this stuff gets sprayed on pretty much everything that we've cleaned. And I'm using my rag again to protect against overspray. It's not going to harm anything, but what I don't want is to get it on the rims where the braking surfaces are, for obvious reasons. And I'm going to apply this to the chain, and when I do so, I'm going to apply it to the inside of the chain. The reason for that is that, firstly, at the bottom stretch, the gravity will assist it to penetrate downwards and in between the links of metal. And the other reason is doing it from the inside out means that the flow of the new oil while it's still wet will hopefully pick up any detritus and old grease and carry it to the outside, where I'll be able to wipe it off as excess later. At least that's the theory. Of course, in practice it may not work quite like that, but why not give it a chance? And I'm not going to lube the chain rings or the rear cassette, because the excess from the chain will carry enough grease on there without us needing to apply it directly. But I am going to apply some to the front mech, the front derailleur. So we do this in sections, again, the sections that are protected against overspray by the rag. And as we go, this time we want to change gears, the rear gears, just shift every now and then, shift a gear down or up until you've evenly covered each and every rear chainring of the rear cassette. That's going because we are using this technique to transfer the excess grease to the chainring rather than applying it directly to the chainring, which will give us a bit of a mess. And I will apply lube to the front mech, the front derailleur, because that's wearing directly against the chain. Of course, there's no actual derailleur at the front. So that needs to be properly lubed. And to lube the front chain rings, just shift the gears up and down again. And finally, go around the other side of the bike, and you can just apply a little lube to the inside edge of the chain, which probably didn't get very lubed if you were working from the outside. You can spray that directly in the sort of front chain ring area. And the final thing to do is to just go around with your rag again and wipe off the excess from the outside of the chain. Now hopefully this will contain a little bit of extra old stuff that we want to get rid of, that the new grease is carried with it as it's worked its way through from the inside to the outside. And the thing is, you don't need to worry about wiping off the new lube from the outside of the chain, because it actually doesn't need to be there. There's nothing on the exterior surface of the chain that actually requires lubing, so go crazy. And with that, you are done. Now with the Teflon stuff, the dry setting stuff, you may want to apply a second coat of it once the first coat has dried. that's recommended on the instructions of most of them. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed the video, hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, post them below. Good luck out there.